Hello, everybody, and either welcome or welcome back to my podcast. As always, I'd like to remind everybody, if you do like this, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. It is with a heavy heart that I come to you this episode, because the online Twitter wars have claimed two more lives. One taken by her own hand, and the other taken by the cruel, cruel Twitter mobs. I'm kidding, it's really not that major, but I did want to go ahead and talk about this episode. Two stories that I think kind of bookend each other rather nicely. And that is Maggie Haberman of the New York Times deciding that she's going to take a step back from Twitter. And also the whole James Gunn Twitter situation. But I want to go ahead and start with the Maggie Haberman situation. If you don't know, she is a writer for the New York Times. Her beat has been covering Donald Trump since 2015. And to back it up a little bit before we get into the piece that she wrote, Maggie kind of committed the cardinal sin of quitting Twitter and did it in a grand way, which is, first of all, she made a tweet announcing that she's going to make a tweet. And then she made a tweet about how she's going to step back from Twitter. And then she wrote a piece about stepping back from Twitter. So it's one of those things where it's like, if you're going to quit or scroll back on Twitter, fine. Just do it. You don't have to make some big fucking announcement. You don't have to make a tweet to announce that you're going to make a tweet and then make a tweet. Like, just do it. If you have to say something, I guess in her case she would, because it would be noticeable if she kind of rolled back and didn't say anything. Just say your little piece and just keep it moving. Like, you don't have to do this performative flouncing off thing that people do now on social media where you basically just tell everybody, I'm quitting. And then it's like, okay, cool, fine. You didn't really have to make a whole post about it, but whatever, here we are. So I wanted to talk about the piece that she did for the New York Times, talking about why she's stepping back from Twitter. And this is going to be one of those ones where I read things to you and tell you about them. So let's go ahead and get into the piece. All right, so here we go. Maggie Haberman, why I needed to pull back from Twitter. The viciousness, toxic partisan anger, and intellectual dishonesty are at all-time highs. I woke up last Sunday morning feeling anxiety in my chest as I checked the Twitter app on my phone, scrolling down to refresh. There was a comment I started to engage with. I opened a new post, tapped out some words, and then thought better of it and deleted the tweet. The same thing happened repeatedly over the next 2 hours. The evening before, I had complained to a close friend that I hated being on Twitter. It was distorting discourse, I said. I couldn't turn off the noise. She asked what was the worst thing that could happen if I stepped away from it. There was nothing I could think of. And so, after 6 p.m. last Sunday, I did. Okay. Stop right there, Maggie. Stop. You could just stop right there. That's it. That's really all you need to say. You really don't even need to give anyone that much of an explanation, but just right there. Full stop. This isn't healthy for me anymore, so I'm stepping away. Which, by the way, I have no problem with anybody doing that. Like, if social media ever becomes a thing where it's unhealthy for you, or you feel like it's toxic, or it's making you feel anxietal, or making you feel a certain way other than fun and happy and enjoying it, then by all means, walk away. Like, there's nothing saying that you have to be on social media, especially if it's something that's not giving you joy or pleasure. But since you can't rage quit Twitter without giving 11 reasons for why you're doing it, the piece goes on. After nearly 9 years and 187,000 tweets, I have used Twitter enough to know that it no longer works well for me. I will re-engage eventually, but in a different way. Twitter has stopped being a place where I can learn things I didn't know, glean information that was free from errors about a breaking news story, or engage in a discussion and be reasonably confident that people's criticisms were in good faith. The viciousness, toxic partisan anger, intellectual dishonesty, motive questioning, and sexism are at all-time highs with no end in sight. It is a place where people who are understandably upset about any number of things go to feed their anger, where the underbelly of free speech is at its most villainous. Okay, first of all, I'm really, really tired of the whole First Amendment free speech thing on Twitter. Free speech is free speech. Whether you like it, whether you don't like it, whether you think it's nasty, whether you think it's uplifting, everybody has the right to speak their minds. And Twitter can do whatever Twitter wants to do. It's their platform. But this whole idea that, like, some people should be silenced because of things that they say. Like, no, that's not how our society works, and at least it's not how it should work. And of course, we all know people do get kicked off Twitter and get shadow banned and all that stuff. And I know I have criticized Twitter for it. I know lots of other people have, rightly. But to kind of scroll back and go back up to the idea, especially this idea that Twitter used to be a place where you could get information about a breaking news story that was free from errors. Which, yes, Maggie, it did used to be that. And why is it not that anymore? Oh, that's right. Because everybody in the media wants to run as quick as they fucking can to post something up on Twitter so you can be the first without bothering to ever fact check it and make sure it's factually correct. Like, this isn't something that just, like, Twitter users started doing. Like, this is something that deliberately, well, not deliberately, I would hope not, but came from mainstream media people posting up shit without fact checking. This is on your profession. So to hear somebody from the media complain about that is particularly rich, considering it's their fault. Like, this is your doing. Like, you're the ones that want to run up there and do this stuff. And on the idea that Twitter used to be a place where you could have discussions and be reasonably confident that people's criticisms were in good faith, kind of stick a pin in that, because I want to come back to that later about how one can be on Twitter, be on social media, and who you interact with. So, to go back to the piece now. Twitter is now an anger video game for many users. It is the only platform on which people feel free to say things that they'd never say to somebody's face. Okay, y'all, guys, don't tell Maggie about Facebook. For me, it has become an enormous and pointless drain on my time and mental energy. I wasn't always a Twitter devotee. During the 2012 campaign, the first during which Twitter was widely used by journalists and campaign aides, I became something of a scold to the younger reporters who I thought misused the medium. How does one misuse Twitter? Like, what? And again, this is another one that I might want to put a little bit of a pin in because I want to come back to it. But what? Like, Twitter is what it is. It's 280 character mind farts. Like, what? It's not this place for, like, lofty discussions about the big issues of our day. It's basically like graffiti. Like, really, what it is, it's just people kind of just, like, plopping stuff up on a wall and moving about their day. Back to the piece. Pictures of themselves at events, inside jokes, and conversation fragments were there for all the world to see. They should treat their feeds like news platforms, I huffed, repeating the line from the powerful movie Broadcast News, in which a TV reporter said sarcastically, "Let's never forget, we're the real story." Well, here's the thing. With the rise of opinion journalism, which Maggie is part of, y'all kind of did make yourselves the story. You did make it about you as people, not necessarily just about your work and your output, but about you as individuals. So again, bitching about that just seems particularly rich from somebody who has participated in that and has got their come up off that. And to be frank, Maggie's won a Pulitzer off of covering Trump, so it's not exactly like the beat's been bad to her. But going back now. But Twitter has a Satako alert for those of us who need frequent inputs and have grown accustomed to them in the Trump era, with news cycles that last roughly 3 hours. And so I tried it, and kept trying it. I got to promote my own stories. I got to provide context. Eventually I started adding more of my voice. Again, like I just said, you started making yourself the story instead of just your work. I started adding more of my voice, dipping my toes in the water to see if I could stand the temperature. I got to defend my reporting and defend my colleagues. Again, you're making yourself the story. I received instant feedback. I met people through Twitter who I wouldn't have otherwise. Readers sent me story tips over direct message. Many pointed out errors, but most did it respectfully, and I was appreciative. There was an art to this medium, and I thought I had figured it out. Okay, there are some kernels of truth here, and there are some spots here where I do agree with Maggie, especially on the idea of meeting people on Twitter that you would not have met otherwise and having conversations that you wouldn't have had otherwise, because I'm in that same boat, really. I mean, I have Twitter friends, I have internet friends that if it was not for this platform, I would probably never have had a chance to speak to these people. So there is that, and that's why I kind of come down on Twitter as being a good thing, because it does enable that kind of dialect with people who otherwise you would have no way of speaking to. Like, it's not like you can just walk up to these people and talk to them. It's like, I would have no occasion to meet some of these people, at least not until probably, hopefully, maybe years and years and years into the future. Moving back to the piece. But the medium has changed. Everyone I follow on the site seems to be tweeting more frequently, so I had to check in more frequently. No matter the time of day or night, I felt like I had to plug back into the matrix, only to be overwhelmed by the amount of content. Okay, this is where I kind of go to whether this is a healthy thing or not. Like, if you feel like you really can't stop checking Twitter, which I will freely admit I have a very active Twitter account, and I'm on Twitter way too much, like probably more so than any rational adult should be on Twitter. But if it's something where, like, especially, I don't like this idea of like saying, oh, because everybody else is on Twitter all the time, I have to be on it too. It's like, no, you can make that decision for yourself to check it however frequently you do or do not want to check it. Like, you're an autonomous individual. Like, you can click on the little Twitter icon or you cannot click on the little Twitter icon. So if that's something that's like you really feel like you don't have control anymore, then maybe you do need to step back. Moving on. More recently, instead of engaging in thoughtful debates, I found myself spending an increasing amount of time explaining an errant word or a poorly phrased tweet, and coming off defensive as I did it. At other times, I watched as an offhand comment became tinder for a divisive national conversation. Okay, this is, yeah, kind of something I want to come back to, but you have complete control over who you do and do not engage with on Twitter. And that's kind of all I want to say about that right now. But if you are engaging with certain people, that's on you. Going back. On Twitter, everything is shrunk down to the same size, making it harder to discern what is a big deal and what is not. Tone often overshadows the actual news. All outrage appears equal. And that makes it harder for significant events, like Mr. Trump's extraordinarily pliant performance with President Vladimir Putin of Russia, to break through. That's kind of a weird example for me, because I don't know, maybe it's just the people on my timeline and the people I follow, but that broke through. That most definitely broke through. So, and as far as kind of all outrage appearing equal, I don't agree with that. And that's, no, it's kind of just that whole idea that just because everybody is on a platform that everybody's voice is kind of equal, I don't really buy into that. Going back to the piece. More significant is the way Mr. Trump has tried to turn everything around him, including the journalists who cover him, into part of his story. And people on Twitter have started to react to me in the same way, treating me as if I am a protagonist in the president's narrative. I found myself in the middle of swarms of vicious Twitter attacks, something that has happened to many other journalists in the Trump era. He creates the impression that the media is almost as powerful as he is in his incessant personalized attacks on reporters on Twitter. Okay, I know Trump is kind of our first Twitter president, but it's not as if everybody didn't know what Trump was like before he was president. Like, he had a Twitter account before that. And yes, if you're talking about him, he's going to tweet back at you. Like, this shouldn't really be news to anybody. As far as they're creating Twitter mobs and stuff like that, I don't agree with that, but there are ways around having to deal with that. And just the whole idea that, I mean, you guys kind of made yourselves part of the story too. And when you started making it about you, then yes, you're part of the story. And of course, Trump is going to talk about you if you're talking about him. Like, that's how he works. He's a narcissistic asshat. So, I mean, this is what it is. But here's the thing. Most of us don't want to be part of the story. Again, do you not want to be part of the story? Because it's a little hard to tell some days. To be clear, Twitter is a useful and important platform. It's a good aggregator for breaking news. I still check my feed to see breaking news developments, and I will continue to. And it is democratic. Everybody gets to have a voice, whether they work for a local paper, a small TV station, or one of the biggest newspapers in the world, or are not in the media business at all. The downside is that everybody is treated as equally expert on various topics. See, I don't think so. I don't think that is how Twitter works at all. And if you do, I I open the floor to comments on this one. Like, I'll post my Twitter handle in the show notes, but I don't view it that way at all. And I don't really think Twitter does either, despite what Jack says in his little Twitter thread that we'll get to after we're done with this. But especially with the whole blue check thing, obviously. Across Twitter, there is a raging debate about the role that journalists should be playing in the current moment. It is mostly waged by partisans who want to accuse journalists of malpractice or who want us to be the opposition party, as Mr. Trump has claimed. There is an important discussion about journalism that must take place, including about how all of us performed during the 2016 campaign. But Twitter is not where nuanced or thoughtful discussion can happen. Yeah, we do need to have a conversation about how y'all acted in 2016. And yeah, there is quite the battle going on. And I mean, it's not just non-media people, it's within the media too, as to what y'all's role is now, as to whether you should be objectors at all, conscientious objectors, the quote-unquote opposition party. There seems to be quite a spectrum of opinion within media personalities about how that's supposed to boil down right now. And I do think it is worth having a conversation about, and I agree, Twitter is not the place for it, because Twitter is not the place for long-form conversations. Okay, going back to the piece, we're about to finish it up. In the more than 20 months since President Trump was elected, I have gained close to 700,000 Twitter followers. I consider myself fortunate to have such a broad audience. I mostly enjoyed being able to interact with readers, and I suspect I will again someday. It just won't be soon. Again, you don't have to flounce off Twitter. Like, this whole piece could have just not been written, but there it is, and that's hopefully the end of her explanation about this, because she's already explained it way, way more than I think anybody should ever have to explain getting off Twitter. But yeah, I wanted to go through that because the whole thing kind of strikes me as complaining about a situation that not just Maggie, I don't mean to pick on her, but her too, you created, and then you create this environment, and then you get upset when it doesn't work out the way you want to, or isn't particularly flattering or nice to you, or makes you deal with things that you don't want to deal with. And it's like, all right, well, maybe you could have listened to some of us and not done this in the first place. You could have just not gone down this road, but then you did. And now bitching about how you went down the road and now it's just backfiring on you just seems a little disingenuous to me. So I think we'll leave off Maggie for a little while. And I've got some thoughts about how you guys and Maggie, if she ever comes back, or anybody else, can kind of manage Twitter better. Here's the thing that I wish more people understood about Twitter. And guys, please try to write this down, memorize it, whatever. It will help you immensely. You are under no obligation on Twitter or any other social media platform to engage with anybody you don't want to. You have more control on social media over who you engage with than you do in real life. There's plenty of people in my day-to-day life that if I could get away with not talking to them, I would gladly do it. But I can't. On Twitter, you can speak to whoever you wish to speak to. You can not speak to whoever you wish to speak to. You can use things like blocking and muting. You can set your notifications to only show notifications from people that follow you, people that you follow, people who have already verified their accounts. You don't really, it's not like this thing where it's just this barrage and you have no control over it. It's no, there's plenty of ways in which you can control and filter what you see on social media. And as far as responding to comments, remember, again, you are under no obligation to respond to anybody for anything at any time. Full stop. And I say that because I think a lot of people, much like Maggie did, get into this habit of thinking that just because somebody tweeted something at you that you have to respond. No, you can choose to respond or not respond. And sometimes I'll engage people on Twitter, sometimes I won't. It just depends on how I feel or how I think you're approaching me, or if I think you're trying to have an actual discussion versus trolling. And as far as trolls are concerned, you don't have to respond to them. Just keep it moving. Just keep it scrolling. Just keep scrolling through your notifications. You don't have to engage anybody that you don't want to engage. That is the lesson that I wish everybody could learn about social media. If I could get it embroidered on a pillow, I would start selling it. But yeah, that's the thing that I think everybody really needs to understand. Okay, having said that, and before we leave off of poor Maggie and move on to James Gunn, I do want to talk about Jack, the Jack of the singular name on Twitter, Jack, decided to make a thread commenting on Maggie's piece. And I want to read the thread to you because this is just, stop it, Jack. No, don't. Oh my God. Anyway, so here goes Jack. A few thoughts on Maggie NYT's article on Twitter. A lot of fair critiques within. Quoting from the piece, but the medium has changed. Everyone I follow on the site seems to be tweeting more frequently, so I had to check in more frequently. This is the intention behind ranking the timeline. Showing you what matters first, everything else still accessible. Lots of work still to do. No, Jack, no. All anybody wants from Twitter is to have our timelines shown to us in our chronological order and a fucking edit button. That's it. Don't do anything else. But no, he doesn't stop. He keeps going. Quoting from the piece again. On Twitter, everything is shrunk down to the same size, making it harder to discern what is a big deal and what is not. Tone often overshadows the actual news. All outrage appears equal. Definitely a problem. Believe we can help solve by showing more context and related conversations. What context? It's a tweet. There's no fucking context to a tweet. I mean, unless it's in the middle of a thread and showing related conversations. If it's not somebody I follow, I don't care. Like, I don't want to see other people's conversations. If I did, I'd fucking follow them. Like, I don't know. I'm already irritated with fucking promoted tweets showing up in my timeline and other people's things. Like, I don't come down so hard on the whole likes showing up in my timeline thing as a lot of y'all do, because sometimes it's like, I don't mind it, but it kind of well, that kind of defeats the whole point of the like button versus the retweet button. But anyway, moving on. This is our primary job. To be clear, Twitter is a useful and important platform. It is a good aggregator for breaking news. I still check my feed to see breaking news developments and will continue to do so. Thinking a lot about how to promote more participation in conversation. Jack, honey, the whole point of the piece was kind of that I think Maggie wants less participation in conversations on Twitter, not more of them. Or at least not of the kind that we get on Twitter now. I don't think anybody's really interested in more conversations on Twitter. Like, did you not read the piece? Anyway, back to Jack here. Powerful, but only if we help organize and not overwhelm people. And it is democratic. Everybody gets to have a voice, whether they work for a local newspaper, small TV station, blah, 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 blah. Again, all Twitter has to do is just show me a timeline in a chronological order. I will take it from there. I'm pretty sure everybody else can too. I don't get rid of the whole in case you missed it thing. Like, just let me scroll through the damn thing. Because then I end up seeing tweets twice. And that fucking annoys me. Like, if I've already read it once, I don't need to read it again. Like, just if you leave me alone, I will get to it. And I won't be in case you missed it. Because if I can just scroll through it in a chronological order, I won't miss it. Okay. Moving back onto this. The downside is that everybody is treated as equally expert on various topics. Now, I kind of told you my thoughts on this. Here are Jack's thoughts on this. One of the biggest areas I believe we can help. Helping to determine credible voices per topic in real time is extremely challenging, but believe it is possible. Mix of algos and network. It is not Twitter's job to determine who is credible and who is not credible, and I don't even know how you would do that, because how would Twitter even know this? I mean, outside of the blue check system, like how are you going to determine that somebody is more or less credible in any particular area than another? Because you don't know people. Like, it's not like Twitter knows everybody and knows what people are and are not, like, versed on. Like, how would you even do this? Like, even floating the idea of doing this is fucking stupid. Like, just let people read things and figure it out all by themselves. You don't need hand-holding. Just let it be. Just let it go. There's an important discussion about journalism that must take place. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, well, let me read it because it actually is kind of important. There's an important discussion about journalism that must take place, including about how all of us performed during the 2016 campaign. But Twitter is not a place where a thoughtful or nuanced discussion can happen. Jack says, this is what we'd like to fix the most. No, that's not what Twitter's for. Like, does he not understand how his platform works? Like, what does he think Twitter is? I'm very confused. I don't think Jack really understands what Twitter is for anymore. But to finish this up, this is his final thoughts. Fundamentally, we need to focus more on the conversational dynamics within Twitter. We haven't paid enough consistent attention here. Better organization, more context, helping to identify credibility, ease of use. Challenging work, and would love to hear your thoughts and ideas. No, my thoughts and ideas is you need to not fucking do this. That's my fucking thoughts and ideas. Just stop it. Stop fucking with the algorithm. Stop trying to figure out, like, ranking tweets and deciding what I should want to see first over other people's tweets. Like, if I follow you, like, I know not everybody is like this on Twitter, but my follows, the people that I follow, is really kind of low, and that's because I actually like to read my timeline. So if I follow you, it's because I'm genuinely interested in what you have to say, and I don't really need Twitter to make this distinction for me as to whose thoughts are more interesting than other people's thoughts. Like, I already made that decision by following someone. So just leave the timeline alone, Jack. Leave it alone, and give us a fucking edit button. That's it. Okay, moving on from all that to the James Gunn thing. James Gunn is a movie director, and he directed Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2, and I guess was either getting ready to or in the process of doing part 3. I don't really keep up with the comic book movies, so I don't really know much about him past that, except for this controversy that happened. Basically, it seems like there are these tweets that I want to go ahead and say I'm not defending the tweets. Like, the tweets are bad. And it's a series of tweets from almost 10 years ago, from what I gather, where he makes jokes about pedophilia and about fucking children and stuff like that. And he says they're jokes. Other people are like, no, this dude's a pedophile. Like, I don't know. I don't know this dude. All I do know is if these were jokes, like, they didn't land. Like, first of all, you don't joke about fucking children. I don't care how much edgelord you're trying to be. There's just certain places that, like, you don't really go, and I'm not trying to say that, like, anything should really be off limits, but if you're going to make a joke about pedophilia or being a pedophile, you should really make it super duper obvious that you're making a joke, and the joke has to land, which these ones didn't. Like, he's talking about liking kids touching him in his silly place and fucking kids and doing all this other shit. Anyway, they're gross tweets. I mean, you can go look them up on the internet if you want to. But what happened was, and this has got to be the most Twitter thing I've ever seen in my entire life, because this starts off not even having anything to do with James Gunn. Basically what happened is another director, Mark Duplass, made a tweet about how at least the tweet was like complimentary to Ben Shapiro, like basically saying like, I'm not a righty, I don't really follow conservatives, but if you wanted to follow one, Ben Shapiro would be a nice one to follow. And of course, because you can't say nice things about Ben Shapiro, lefty Twitter just fucking lost their shit on this dude. Like, everybody came after this dude. He eventually had to, like, walk it back, had to write an apology. It was just, like, this whole really stupid, dumb situation. But in the midst of that, Gunn had come in to defend Duplass, but while in the tweet where he was defending what Duplass said, he called Ben Shapiro an asshole, which this then pissed off Cernovich. So Cernovich went back into Gunn's tweets, found these tweets, re-promoted them, and got dude fired. And I feel stupider for having said that whole sentence. I award myself no points, and may God have mercy on my soul. But then on top of all that, it comes out that back in 2012, people came after Gunn for making various tweets. I think it was about like LGBT people, but basically he's already been called out for these tweets, has already apologized for them, but astoundingly didn't delete the tweets, which, what the fuck is wrong with you? Delete the fucking tweets. You don't leave stuff like that up if you are contrite. And who knows? Like I said, I don't know this dude, but like, if you've already been called out for something, like, don't leave the fucking tweets up. Delete them. What is wrong with you? Like, are you really that much of an attention whore that you have to leave that up? But anyway, so that happened. Got dude fired. And so now it's become a big thing about, okay, do you get fired for these tweets? Do you not get fired for them? Oh my God, Twitter mobs. And this is kind of, before we go into that, I want to take a moment to say something that I see starting to happen a lot on Twitter and on social media. And that's calling people pedophiles. Like, can we not do to the word pedophile what we did to the word racist and Nazi? Like, pedophilia is quite possibly one of the grossest, worst things that anybody can do on this planet. And I don't want to see that concept minimized or that word minimized by having it just be thrown out at everybody. Can we please not do that? Like, don't go down that road. Don't ruin this word, because there are actual pedophiles in the world. And like I said, is this dude a pedophile? I don't fucking know. Those tweets were creepy as hell, but I'm starting to see that kind of like bandied around a lot more on the internet than I really think it should be. And I think that is really an accusation that you need to keep in your pocket for people that you can prove are pedophiles. Like, don't ruin the word, guys. That's all I'm asking. Just don't ruin the word. But kind of going back to where I was saying before, it's become this thing, and it's funny to see because a lot of leftists have come out against this, not necessarily defending his tweets, but basically getting mad at the online mob culture that started this. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? Like, this is, you're gonna be pissed about this. Like, okay, the left is gonna be pissed about online mobs costing people their jobs. Like, are you fucking serious? Like, stop it. You started this. This is the environment you created. And quite frankly, I'm surprised it took somebody, especially somebody like Cernovich, this long to start engaging in it. Like, I expected this to start happening like years ago. So that this is now just happening to you guys, and now you want to bitch about it? That's rich to me. Like, that's really, really rich. And I know I've touched on this in past episodes, but I want to just go ahead and reiterate it for this episode. I do not agree with online mobs. I don't agree with that mentality. I don't agree with this whole collecting scalps thing. It's gross. It's disgusting. It's really a vile thing to do to somebody. But to see it turned around on the people that started it and then watch them complain about it, it's like, I would hope this would be a teachable moment, but I know it's not going to be a teachable moment because all the left is going to do is double down on this. And it's like, just stop. Just fucking stop it with this. Like, it's just learn, get some level of self-introspection and look inside yourself and realize, oh wow, this is bad when we do this. This does feel kind of shitty. Maybe we ought not do it anymore. But like I said, I know it's not going to happen. Wishful thinking. But, a girl can dream. And the other thing that kind of came out of this that I wasn't aware of until this whole James Gunn thing happened was that there's apparently like services you can sign up for that automatically delete your tweets after a certain amount of time, which I was like, what? Like, why would you do that? Like, what is going on in your world that you need to do that? But yeah, I found out that like I think it's Tweet Delete, that you can set it up to delete your tweets, like, even after, like, a month. It'll delete anything older than a month. And I'm just like, is this really where we're at? Like, is this, like, are people that scared that, like, you need to, like, just scrub your internet past on a monthly basis so that people don't come after you? Like, that really made me stop and think. I was like, wow, that's wild. And also, the whole idea, like, okay, well, if you're that worried, maybe think before you mash that tweet button. Like, if you're really worried about your past tweets coming back to bite you in the ass, then my suggestion would be, instead of deleting them, just stop and think for a second before you actually send out the tweet in the first place. Because if it's something that you feel like somebody's going to come at you for, like, years down the road, maybe don't tweet that. Like, maybe, don't make child rape jokes. I don't know. I don't make child rape jokes. I don't really ever feel the need to delete a tweet, although I will do it from time to time. Like, I do think there is value in deleting tweets sometimes. Like, if I get something factually wrong, like, I will delete the tweet and redo it. I don't leave the tweet up and then post a correction. Media, I'm talking to you. Delete your tweet if you've been proven wrong, and then retweet. That's the proper way to do it. Don't leave the old tweet up. Just delete it. Don't be an attention whore. Be factual. But then there's also times that I've deleted tweets where it's like, sometimes it's like, this might be like a little bit too far. Like, I might have gone a little too far. And so, yeah, I'll delete the tweet because, I'm not really on Twitter to fight anybody. So if it's something where it's going to start being like this contentious thing, I'd rather just delete the tweet and keep it moving than try to like fight people over it. Like, to me, that's just not worth the time. But yeah, it was interesting to see these two stories kind of come out back to back, because they kind of deal with the same thing, but just from two different perspectives. From one person who has chosen to remove herself from the situation versus somebody who has been removed from their situation. And for what it's worth, it seems like James Gunn has deleted all of his tweets. I don't know if you can really delete a Twitter account. I don't know how that works. But yeah, it was it was interesting. And I know it's a topic I've discussed a couple of times before, but it just fascinated me to see the two of these come out kind of back to back. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. I know I've gone on long enough. So if you do like this, as always, please rate, comment, and subscribe. You can find me on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher. Take care, and until next time.